All right, back some baseball action here.
Back on the diamond.
Back on the diamond, doing a little 80s and 90s again.
Yeah.
I'm all about that shit.
Well, that's the era, man. That's
It's the best era of baseball.
you know?
This guy should have been in the Hall of Fame if his body just didn't give up on him. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I am your co-host, Dominic DiTolla, sitting alongside my co-host, Chris Quinn. And today we got a little MLB action for one of the 80s and 90s best players whose body just couldn't hold up, unfortunately, because he was a special talent.
Well, he was a Viking.
He kind of was.
And we're talking about Eric the Red.
Eric the Red, Eric Davis, one of baseball's best outfielders of his era when he could actually get on the field.
Yeah, well, like you said, his career was plagued with injury, and he has these moments where you're like, wow, if he had done that for a decade,
Yeah.
there would have been no question.
Absolutely not. I mean, when he was on, this guy was always on. And wearing those red high tops, just an absolute fucking sleek dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, you're right. In this era of 80s, 90s baseball, he was definitely fashion forward. He was definitely looking cool. And,
this dude had like a quiet swag to him, which I
Yeah.
always loved. Like, even as a kid, he was one of my favorite non-Padres players, Eric Davis. But
and that says something. I'm just saying,
yeah, I mean, I like a lot of non-Padres, but this guy, he was definitely a favorite. Born May 29th, 1962, one of three children, Jimmy and Shirley Davis, in Los Angeles, California. Was quite the basketball player growing up.
yes, he was thought to be, and we're going to get into this like 5 minutes later, but he was thought that he might even go into the basketball into college and then NBA, but that ends up not happening.
And it's not like a Tony Gwynn where his size limits him as far as his height. This dude was like 6'2", 6'3", 180 pounds. Granted, he could have bulked up more, but he could have played basketball with how good that he was.
In his senior year, he had 29-point average, 10. So he went almost like 30 and 10 in his senior year. So
and it's
like
10 assists, so this guy knew where people were on the
Yeah.
basketball court. He had a high basketball IQ, much like his high baseball IQ.
So that definitely was a path that he could take, but like I alluded to 5 seconds earlier, he ended up not taking it because of academics.
Academics.
He felt like he didn't want to go further than high school.
Yeah,
So
he didn't
made
want
it-
to waste his time in college.
Exactly. He made it clear that sports were going to be his future, and the path that basketball had to take, especially in this time, there wasn't one and done even. There wasn't skipping college. There was like, you had to go for
At least three years.
yeah.
At least. And that has to weigh heavily on you as far as like, oh, I'm away from home, blah, blah, blah. And basketball, I mean, he played against Byron Scott as a kid in L.A. I mean, his main kind of baseball, I won't even say rival because they were friends, was Darryl Strawberry, who went to Crenshaw High School in L.A., and then Davis went to Fremont. As a senior, he was raking. He hit 635 with 5 home runs and stole 50 bases in only 15 games. That's why I always love Eric Davis, because he should have been the first 40-40 guy in the MLB.
Yes.
But that wasn't using steroids. That wasn't Jose Canseco, because he had that type of ability. And even though he was kind of, a really great baseball player in the 1980 draft where Strawberry was drafted first overall by the Mets, Davis slips to the 8th round.
I thought this was interesting because I felt like his athletic ability should have shown that at least he would have this upside potential, where I felt like he should have been drafted earlier, but I guess there's all this cloud around him that you didn't know if he was going to come play baseball. You didn't know if he was going to go to, so it was almost like a safe pick at the end.
Yeah, it's more or less teams going, well, if he doesn't think he can qualify academically, what makes him think he can play baseball?
Yeah.
One of those old white man type of bullshit reasoning. So I was always shocked, like, when I had first read that 8th round. Are you kidding me? At a high school? I mean, I'm sure college recruiters for basketball were trying to go after him. But
I'm sure.
This was the draft that Billy Beane, where he was accepted to Stanford. He went in the first round. So whatever the case, the Reds got a steal here.
Yes.
Which I always find weird, though, is like, oh, I don't want to play 3 years in college and not necessarily get paid. I mean, in the 80s, you're not making a hell of a lot of money as a minor leaguer. He spends about 3 or 4 years in the Reds minor league system. Granted, he tears it up. I mean, he does a fantastic job.
Well, I feel like this is kind of what I was alluding to, which he kind of wanted to stop his academic progress and focus completely on baseball, and that's what you do in the minors. Like, it's baseball all day, every day. So, and that's what really turns him into this great baseball player, I feel like.
Yeah, he pulls a Lenny Dykstra without the insanity shtick. 82 in single A at Cedar Rapids. It's 276, 80 runs, 15 homers, 56 ribbies, 53 stolen bases. And that's one part of his game a lot of people don't remember. Not only was this guy a great base stealer, he was a very smart base runner.
That was what I kept coming back to, was it would be like, oh, he had 56 stolen bases, and he was only thrown out 8 times. And you're just like, oh, man, that is such a great... He has such great ratio and, like what you were saying, base running awareness.
Really, the only guys who could do what he did, where he would hit like 30 homers over a 162-game span and steal 80 bases, the only other player is Ricky Henderson, who is arguably one of the greatest players to ever play baseball in any era. And in 83, he's splitting between Double-A and Triple-A. Hits 292, 27 homers, 62 RBIs, 48 stolen bases. And in 84... he makes the team in May due to some injuries from other players, and he hits 224 and 10 homers.
Well, and this is exactly what it's like when a guy comes up out of the minors, is they play him a short amount of games and they get him into the system. And I remember reading this thing that somebody wrote about him in 84. They said, this guy has all the tools, and he almost looks like Willie Mays. And I loved that in this short span where they see him coming up from AAA. They're like, this guy is going to be good because he's got everything.
Well, he's a 5-tool player in the purest sense. I mean, and he's coming into the league basically the same time as Bonds is in Pittsburgh. He can hit for average, he hits for power. I mean, both of those are 2, but he can field, he can run, and he can throw. I mean, he can do literally everything.
Well, and I think
on a baseball field that he wants to.
But I think the thing that kind of gets overlooked sometimes with these guys who are unbelievably athletic with Davis is he has all the baseball intelligence that you want. The base running, you know what I mean? So that's why I feel like he was so good in this era we're about to talk about.
Well, and he's a perfect addition to Cincinnati's outfield. I mean, he is your perfect center fielder who can play left, who can play right field too. And one of the things he talks about a lot is how much respect he had for Pete Rose as a manager.
Yes.
Pete Rose always believed in this guy. He loves Pete Rose as his coach. Granted, gambling shit aside, like that team that they eventually build, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
As great a manager as Lou Piniella is, he has a Hall of Fame caliber career as a manager. Fantastic. That's Pete Rose's team that wins a World Series in 1990. And all of the players on that team who are worth anything as far as their talent on the field all respect the shit out of Pete Rose as a manager.
And Pete brought a lot of those guys up and gave them the confidence to be these great players.
Yeah, he's like, oh, no, you can play. Just play your ass off for me, and I don't care. Like, 85, he's limited to only 56 games, 8 dingers, 18 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, hits sub 250, but 86 is
now
the season.
Now we talk about 86.
There's this block. There's this 86 to 1990 block that Eric Davis plays, which is one of the most incredible eras for a center fielder during this time, for an outfielder in the National League at this time, which it almost gets lost in the shuffle because it's kind of pre-steroid era and nobody's necessarily paying attention. Cincinnati's kind of a smaller market, and the team keeps finishing second in the NL West. But my God, Eric Davis was just the man during this period.
Well, to think about the amount of home runs and stolen bases he got in this era of 86, because in 86 he actually has 27 home runs and he has 80 stolen bases.
Which is amazing.
Him and Ricky Henderson are the only guys to ever do this, and they call it the 20-80. And like we were saying, he should have been the first guy to go 40-40.
He had that potential, yeah.
It really should have been, but he, which nothing against his numbers. I'm just saying his home run and stolen bases, I just don't think you're ever going to see these numbers like that again. The guys just don't play like that.
Well, I wanted to bring these two stats up. He scored 97 runs that season in 132 games and drove in 71, hit 277, made the All-Star team. He also had that dust up in 86 with the Mets and Ray Knight where he goes into third base and just starts beating his ass until both benches clear.
Yeah.
There's also a great story. I don't think it's from 86, but it's during that era. Dave Parker, a guy who should be in the Hall of Fame, we talked about during our drug episode. Parker got traded to the Reds during this time period. He's a Cincinnati guy. Pittsburgh just wanted to get rid of him from all the fallout of the cocaine shit.
Yep.
They're playing the Pirates at Three Rivers Stadium, and Parker strikes out with the bases loaded, and Davis follows him. Parker's cheering him on from the bench, and I think on the first pitch, Davis goes yard and knocks in a grand slam. And when Davis talks about this, he said, I just hear Dave Parker yelling from the bench, "Attaboy, E, hey, way to go, E." And when he crosses home plate, they embrace, and he said, that was my first bottle of Dom Perignon that night. Dave Parker bought me that.
That's awesome.
I know, right? It's pretty sweet. But 87, still doing his thing, makes the All-Star team, wins a Gold Glove and a Silver Slugger, hits 293, 120 runs, 23 doubles, 37 homers, 100 RBIs, 50 stolen bases, and a 991 OPS. I mean, granted, this team finishes in second place, but you have what is basically the most versatile, awesome baseball player on your team in the major leagues at this time who's not doing steroids.
Yeah. Well, this is what I feel like is he's the best outfielder that you can have because he brings so much to so many different facets of the game.
Yeah, so, this was 89 after an 88 season, which, and I need to point this out. I really need to point this out about Eric Davis and his career because it kind of puts things in perspective about like the what if factor. He played in a only career high 135 games. Baseball seasons at this point, and still are 162 games long, COVID notwithstanding, but 162. That means you're missing that many games. You're missing 27 games in a season.
And that's his high.
And he still won a Gold Glove, had 26 homers and 93 RBIs.
Yep.
I mean, just get him on the field. I don't know what you do, witch doctor shit, but just like let this guy play and play healthy because he's so good. Right-handed, I love his batting stance too.
Oh, yes.
Kind of as it progressed throughout the years where it's almost like his feet are close together, but he kind of waves that bat in the right-handed batter's box. And then when the pitch comes, he takes this just powerful stride, and his hands are so fast he could just park it wherever the fuck he wanted. Just, he was a joy to watch.
Yeah.
And then in the outfield, my God, just the amount of range that this guy had, whether it's left field or center field or right field, wherever you played him. I mean, he would track balls down, had a hell of a fucking hose there, just tossing it out from the outfield.
And then we can talk about his arm if you want.
Oh, there you go.
Come on now. And then we get into the 1990 season, which is the season that the Reds are building for.
Well, yeah, because he's coming off the 89, 281, 34 homers, 101 RBIs, and the team goes wire to wire in 1990. They go wire to wire, which means you start the year in first place, you end the year in first place in the NL West. They had kind of a dip there in the middle where they let some teams kind of catch up, but then they just rose right up to finish 91 and 71, which was good enough to play in the NLCS. And they had a stacked roster, guys like Paul O'Neill, Billy Hatcher, Chris Sabo, Barry Larkin, who's in the Hall of Fame, solid pitching staff with Tom Browning, Jose Rijo, which was eventual World Series MVP, and then the Nasty Boys out of the bullpen.
Yep.
Norm Charlton, Randy Myers, and Rob Dibble. We got to do an episode on Rob Dibble. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Yeah, I got a good story. He one time threw a ball off a bunt at the base runner directly.
Oh, yeah, threw it at him?
Yeah, he threw it at him. But this was a kind of an interesting collection of players. Had kind of a mediocre season, hit 260, 26 doubles, 24 homers, 86 RBIs. Still had over 20 steals, so he's a 20-20 guy.
Yeah.
In the NLCS, while he struggles to hit against the Pirates, he hits 174, only has one extra base hit. His prowess in the field is what most people remember from this series.
Yeah, he definitely, because like we were saying, in the 3 years previous, his hitting and stealing are off the charts, and then it kind of dips a tiny bit right here.
Well, there's one play in particular. Bobby Bonilla, batting right-handed, hits one out to center field where Billy Hatcher, who's playing center, tries to make a catch at the wall, completely misjudges it, and it's kind of knocks off the wall and deadens in the turf at Three Rivers, just like dies in mid-center field. Davis, because of his baseball IQ, fucking sees the ball laying there. Bonilla, if he was faster, probably would have had an inside-the-park home run, but he's trying to take three on a triple off the misjudged fly ball. Davis picks the ball up, fires it to third base at Sabo. The ball takes only one hop, and they completely hose Bonilla there. It was, I mean, if you watch this play, go to YouTube. It's on there. It is amazing. Like, that's the type of outfielder that Eric Davis was. Like, if you could put it in one play, just very smart, judging where it's at, knowing the situation, and just executing.
Hey everybody, just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
That pretty much is his fielding right there, is the execution.
They win the series 4-2,
Yep.
And then they have to play the big bad roided A's in the World Series in 1990, and at that time, nobody gave the Reds a chance to win.
Well, no, the A's were the team, you know, McGuire, right?
Canseco, all those guys. I mean, they had just won the World Series.
Everybody
in
else juicing, because that's the thing is, like, you think about it, couldn't have just been those two.
And they had Ricky Henderson on their team. I mean, everyone was assuming this would be a 4-game sweep for Oakland. They had won the last two pennants in the AL, won the World Series in '89. And the bottom of the first in the first game, Eric Davis puts him on notice.
And this, I love this so much. His first at-bat in this World Series, he just tattoos one.
It changes the series. He's facing one of the best postseason pitchers of all time in Dave Stewart, and just parks it to left center field.
Yep.
And I mean, this is like a fucking moonshot. He just takes him deep.
Thinking about like other sports, it would be like if you got like an off the backboard alley-oop right off the back, and everyone's like, where the hell did that come from? Or just like off the kickoff, it was a return. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was a play like that where it changes momentum, where you didn't even realize momentum was going that other way.
No, because nobody had any idea what would happen, and kudos to the rest of the roster who just raked the entire series along with Davis. But Jose Rio leading the pitching staff, he was, I believe, the World Series MVP because he had two strong starts, not only in that Game 1, but also in the Game 4, which we'll talk about. The Reds swept him.
Yep.
But
Which, I just want to bring this up because before going into it, everybody thought the A's were going to sweep them.
Yeah.
And then when the Reds show up and sweep them, it was such a amazing World Series win.
I think everyone was predicting, you know, from my research, like, okay, the Reds got 2 at home because they played the first 2 at Riverfront. Everyone was thinking, all right, Oakland, if they come out and win Game 3, this series is over. They'll get everything under control. But Cincinnati wins Game 3, and heading into Game 4, it's like, my God, this is do or die. Rio's on the mound again.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't start out well for Cincinnati, particularly Davis, because of what happens in the bottom of the first inning. Willie McGee hits an opposite field kind of looper into left field. And Davis dives for the ball, almost makes the catch. Unfortunately, he doesn't make it, but even more unfortunately, during the process of that catch, he lacerates his kidney in the bottom of the first inning of Game 4, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Which is horrendous.
A little
for him.
scary, yeah.
And Cincinnati's thinking like, well, we've lost Davis. I think Billy Hatcher got hit in the hand on a pitch in that game too, and he had something like 8 at-bats in a row where he had gotten a hit in the World Series. So everyone's like, shit, we need to close him out right now or else things could get kind of testy here. And to Cincinnati's credit, they come back later in the game and they win the game and they win the World Series. But Davis is laid up in the hospital for the next like month and a half.
Yes. And this is where the relationship with Davis and the Reds kind of takes a bit of a different ways, because before this and after winning the World Series, you would think that they would be euphoric and wanting this star player to be back in Cincinnati, because that was his thing. Was he was laid up in Oakland or wherever they had him in California at that point, and he said he really wanted a private plane to fly him back home with the amenities, because we just won the World Series. Like,
and
what
I'm
are we
the best
doing?
player on this team.
Exactly.
What was it? Paul O'Neill, who had a great career with the Reds and Yankees, said he was the best at everything.
No, his
best
quote,
hitter, best base runner, best stealer, best thrower, everything.
Yeah, that quote from Paul O'Neill kind of puts it in perspective. He's like, he was the best I have ever seen.
And Paul O'Neill won 4 World Series with the Yankees with all of those good players. For him to say that about Eric Davis, that's means a lot. I would think.
And it's not like he was saying like, well, he was better at this player than this. He was like, no, he's the best hitter. He was the fastest. That's the thing about this Reds organization at this moment was, how do you blow up a world championship team? Here you go. Like, your guy is laid up in the hospital. Give him what he wants.
And it's not like he was asking for the world either.
No.
That's what always gets me. It's not like he was asking for necessarily special treatment beyond being the team's best player.
Well, what he said was their response was pretty much like, yeah, you could find your own way back to Cincinnati. It's the off season.
It's not like Wayne's World 2. And Ozzy asked for 1,000 brown M&Ms to fill a brandy glass.
Or Eric Davis wouldn't go on that night.
So he falls out of favor at 91, even though he starts the year, I mean, with the team and he's ready to go. He just didn't perform up to par. He only played in 89 games, hit sub 240, 11 homers, and his time in Cincinnati is pretty much done because they trade him to the Dodgers that November 27th, 1991, along with Kip Gross for starting pitcher Tim Belcher and future child molester John Wetland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got to be traded sometime.
But Davis, it's almost like Strawberry when he goes back to L.A. because they're teammates in L.A. And at this time, it's kind of that Sheffield thing we talked about. They were just more interested in spending money as opposed to like building a competent organization.
Yep.
And 92, he only plays in 76 games.
Well, he keeps getting these little injuries keep popping up, and
because he had that knee injury that he had to have surgery on, in addition to his kidney thing. But then you have rib and wrist injuries, and you're just like, because he's playing these seasons. It's not like he's missing seasons individually. He's just getting nicked up for whatever reason. His body just fails him, which is tragic.
Yep, because he's missing half a season, a third of a season, and he's still putting up some great numbers, but you can tell the organizations want him to be healthier.
Yeah, I mean, he played in 108 games in 93, limited to 5 homers and 32 RBIs in 92, 20 homers, 68 RBIs, and then he's traded August 31st, 1993 to Detroit, where he hit 253 with 6 homers and 15 RBIs. But 1994, the injuries come back again.
And that's in a strike-shortened season, so he has injuries, but the whole season's shortened, so it's
And he's playing for a shitty organization.
Again.
Hitting sub 200 in only 37 games. And then because of all these injuries, he just chooses to retire in 95.
Well, I bet it was discussed with the Tigers. They were like, "Are you done?" And they released him, and he decided to retire. Which I wonder if he thought, "I'm going to retire, get healthy, and come back this next year," because that's what he ends up doing. Or if he thought, "I'm done with baseball."
I'm sure that thought probably crossed his mind because he probably figured, I'm a 2-time All-Star. I've won a World Series. I've won the Gold Glove 3 times, 2 Silver Sluggers. He's only like 31, 32 at this point. So what the hell's the point anymore? I mean, I'm not saying that was his own thinking, but I'm sure that had to have crossed his mind.
Yeah,
it's like,
definitely.
Why not leave while I'm still healthy? But he comes back in 96.
That's what I really love.
And he comes back to a good Reds team that had just won the division and made the NLCS the previous season.
Yep.
Unfortunately for the Reds, however they were ran, which was obviously very stupidly considering they passed on Derek Jeter in the 92 draft at this point, They got rid of manager Davey Johnson, who later went on to manage Davis in Baltimore, but also have a very successful career there. They fired him. They got rid of him after 95 and hired Ray Knight.
And that was obviously he wasn't going to come back. So they pretty much just let him go into free agency.
Pretty much. But in 96, Davis had a great season. He played in 129 games. His body was obviously back to at least somewhat a tip-top form. 26 homers, 83 RBIs, 81 runs, 20 doubles, and 23 stolen bases. He hit 287 that year.
This is him back into what you knew in this 80-90 era, which is he's raking 25, he's stealing 25, he's hitting over 275. Like, this is what you think of what Eric Davis should have done.
And he's still got a few years left in his prime. This is his age 33 season.
Exactly.
So, I mean, he can still play, but after the season, because of his issues with Knight.
That's what I'm...
Yeah, you want to go into that? Or
well, he just... what I read was that from being at the Reds organization, the big thing from him was he loved Pete Rose so much and then couldn't understand how they could hire Ray Knight.
Yeah, and I mean, players love Lou Piniella, too, because he's an also players manager. Granted, he has more of a short fuse than a lot of other managers, but, like, you respect that.
You respect him.
The pedigree
Yes.
of his playing career, of his managing career. It's like, yeah, I'll play for this guy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, somebody like Ray Knight, it just didn't mesh.
And he literally got in a fight with him a decade earlier. Or
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like in baseball, you have to understand what team you have. Does that make sense? Like,
Exactly.
if Derek Jeter was out there being a manager, the Red Sox wouldn't hire him. It just, like, shit like that just wouldn't happen. And you got to make sure your team melds. So, and that's why, because they essentially back Ray Knight, is they released Davis into free agency after he has a great year.
Well, Knight had played for the Reds. He was actually the reason they got rid of Pete Rose. They let him go to Philadelphia. But, after those Mets years, why would you want him back?
Yeah, I don't know.
But 97, he signs with a stacked Orioles team, which actually won the division that year. New York was the wild card. He only played in 42 games, unfortunately, because of some medical issues that aren't baseball related.
And here we go with the ridiculousness of this guy's career that he can't catch a break on his stuff. He gets diagnosed with colon cancer.
Yeah, he had been having some issues in that region, slid into home one day and just couldn't take it anymore. Went to the doctor and diagnosed with colon cancer at 35.
Yeah.
He had surgery, went through he played baseball while he was going through chemotherapy, which I found, anyone wants to question this guy's toughness. I mean, it's like, oh, well, he's always injured. It's like,
no.
If other guys had the same injuries as him, especially with this colon cancer thing, that's when you realize it's like all the talk needs to end, because if other guys had those same other injuries, which, like, put them on the DL for a week, guys would be out for months.
Yes, definitely.
Or an entire season.
Well, that's what I read was he wanted to train throughout his treatment so he would be ready when it came back. And that's what he did, was he just, like, kept training all that he could, even though he was obviously...
hurting.
Yeah.
Obviously he's probably a DH only at this point as far as the American League. But by that same token, you just look at him and you go, this dude can't catch a break.
Yeah.
He can't catch a break. And you feel for him because the talent is still there.
I know. That's
and
the thing
the
that
want
sucks.
to is still there.
Yes.
But it's like, oh, you have cancer now. It's like, oh my God, you poor bastard.
So in 97... he hits that home run
in Game 5 of the ALCS, which extends that series to a 6th game. I don't know if we've talked about that ALCS, but it is very wonky as far as Cleveland winning a game on a missed bunt suicide squeeze. That went to the backs. Like, Baltimore, for all intents and purposes, in that series had the better team. Somehow, in some odd dimension, Cleveland ended up winning. But
that's what happens when you got Jake Taylor behind the plate.
That's right, Jake Taylor. But because of his efforts, he won the Roberto Clemente Award.
Yeah.
And heading into 98, when he finally could play again, dude absolutely kicked ass.
Well, this is something that it is so awesome. Like you said, 97, 99% of the players probably would have retired.
Yeah.
And
walked away.
98, he comes back and has one of his best seasons.
Well, yeah, he absolutely kills it. He has a career high 148 hits, 29 doubles, 28 home runs, 89 RBIs, career high 327 batting average, and OPS of 970.
Yeah.
Which, what more could you want out of a guy? Granted, Baltimore isn't a very good team in 98 because they let a lot of their players go and had injuries, but it's like, that's comeback player of the year material right there.
Coming off of chemo. It's insane. And I love it. And that's what made me think about Davis as more than, if that makes sense, because of all the injuries that he literally battled through is insane.
This is a guy who, if he played his whole career, like his arc stayed the same.
Yep.
He would have probably put up comparable power numbers and RBI numbers to somebody like a Vladimir Guerrero, and the steals numbers, I don't even know.
Well, that's what I mean. It was, he had 80 in a season. Let's just put that.
Like if it had all kind of come together for him, this guy could very likely be in Cooperstown outside of the injuries.
Oh, absolutely.
He still even played 3 more years after he left Baltimore. 99, 2000, he played for St. Louis.
Yep.
2001, he played for the Giants. Granted, he was more of a role player and a bench guy, especially in the National League. Over those 3 seasons, he hit 263 with 15 home runs and only got 687 plate appearances, but, still, yeah. And when you look at his career stats, I always find this interesting. He hit almost 270 with 938 runs, 282 homers, 934 RBIs, 349 stolen bases, and had a 984 fielding percentage as an outfielder. If 135 games is the maximum that he plays in a season, particularly during his prime, say we add 400 more games throughout his career, particularly in that period, man, you're looking at someone who's knocking on the door in Cooperstown.
Absolutely.
You really do. And, granted, he's healthy. He's been coaching again. Everything has worked out for him. But as a fan, you just kind of
wonder what if
he left you wanting more. And I guess that's, the mark of any great career, but you're left wanting more, especially if you saw, I watched him in person when I was a kid, and you're just like, this is one of the best players in baseball right now.
Yep.
And he was just so
good. For 4 years, he was one of the best. And that's the thing is, I don't think that he doesn't necessarily deserves to go to Cooperstown.
No, he doesn't. He didn't log enough games.
He definitely deserves to be mentioned. And this is what I mean with this podcast is he was such a great baseball player and has some unbelievable years and stats and stories
and moments, postseason
moments, man.
And it's like you feel for these guys because you don't want them lost to history.
Yes, exactly.
Because he never had a big scandal, anything off the field that was damaging or horrible. It was just if
a solid center fielder.
Yeah, if you saw him play, you were you're watching greatness. You just wish that time period was extended.
Yep.
So go to YouTube, find out whatever the hell you can, because this guy was awesome. So Eric Davis.
Hey everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.